All right. Hey, everyone. It's November the 23rd, the year 2016. And I'm always trying to learn more about Ed and Elaine Brown, Danny Reilly, and Jason Gerhard. They're all in prison at this point in time. Ed and Elaine Brown will never be released until they're like 103, 104, unless a miracle happens. But I got an email tonight from Peter Reilly, believe it or not. And Peter Reilly recently wrote an article about Brian Denlinger, also known as Husky394XP on YouTube, and Husky's recent video where he goes on over an hour calling Ken Hovind a Jesuit and Peter Reilly a Jesuit, and him and his wife call me wicked. And anyway, Peter Reilly wrote an article, and you're certainly welcome to read it. I'll try to put the link in the description bar. One of the things Peter Reilly does in that article is he sends a little jab at me and says that I should apologize to Miss Denlinger because I referred to her as an Amish cult member. I believe that's the worst thing I did, even though her and her husband refer to me as a special level of wicked, or I have a special degree of wickedness. I forget exactly how they worded it, but the fact that they went on for over an hour and talked about Ken Hovind being an ecumenical Jesuit, I thought was absurd. But regardless of the disagreements that gentlemen may have, and we may get very passionate in our disagreements and refer to each other as some bad names, sometimes that's what men do. I will have to agree with Peter Reilly that I should not have referred to Miss Denlinger as a Amish cult member. So I will go on the record and apologize to Miss Denlinger, even though she agreed with her husband that I have a special degree of wickedness. She has the right to say that, and I should not bring other men's wives into the argument. So, Peter, you suggested in your article that I apologize, and I have succumbed to your suggestion, and I did apologize to Miss Denlinger for calling her an Amish cult member. But anyway, that's not the purpose of this video. The purpose of this video is that back in 2012, February the 13th, Peter Reilly wrote an article on Ed and Elaine Brown. Isn't that amazing? It's a very small world, actually, that I'm now communicating with Ed and Elaine Brown, and now Peter Reilly not only covered Ken Hovind, but he's covered Ed and Elaine Brown, mainly because Peter Reilly covers tax-related issues. You would almost believe there's some sort of Jesuit conspiracy between me, Ken Hovind, and Peter Reilly, right? But no, that's not the case at all. But I want to read Peter Reilly's article about Ed and Elaine Brown into YouTube, and mainly because I want to learn more about Ed and Elaine Brown, but also he covers a little bit about how Ed and Elaine Brown let down their guard, and when they let down their guard, that's when the feds took advantage of them, and that's why they're sitting in prison right now. But here goes. Here's Peter Reilly's article on Ed and Elaine Brown. The title of the article is Pardoned by President Ron Paul, Last Hope for the Browns. Ed and Elaine Brown recently received bad news from the First Circuit. Their July 2009 convictions were upheld. Let me also say this. I'm very inclined to print this article off and to mail it to Ed Brown to see if he has anything to add to this. Because a lot of times, no offense, Peter, but when journalists or bloggers write about prisoners, I find a lot of times prisoners have a lot of corrections. So I might take your article and just mail it to Ed Brown and ask him to comment. But anyway, let's continue to read. Ed and Elaine Brown recently received bad news from the First Circuit. Their July 2009 convictions were upheld. The convictions were for quite a few things, but it boils down to how they reacted to their 2007 convictions for refusing to pay income taxes. Instead of surrendering to serve their 5-year sentences, they fortified their home in New Hampshire, stockpiling food and weapons. They had a lot of sympathy and support, including an endorsement by presidential candidate Ron Paul, who compared them to Gandhi and Martin Luther King in this interview. And then Peter Reilly has a clip from Ron Paul where Ron Paul does that on video. Peter Reilly goes on to write, when you are sentenced to a federal prison term and instead of surrendering, you fortify your home and stockpile weapons, you are committing quite a few crimes, such as conspiracy to prevent by force, intimidation or threats, office or threaten officers of the United States from discharging their duties. You know, I would like to, I could have a lot to add to that, especially if you think that when an officer of the United States is discharging their duty and they're breaking the law, or they're not abiding by the law, whether a person has the right to defend themselves in their own home. That's probably a topic for a whole nother discussion. But anyway, Peter goes on to write, and possession of firearms after having been convicted of a felony. My. Well, I guess what probably Ed Brown would say to that is he was convicted of a felony, but I know that he's often said, where is the law? Right? So we do pay, most people do pay their income tax, but I'm going to have to go in the other room. Can you do the Sean thing?
Yeah.
All right.
This is Global Tel. Your call.
I don't have a recorder, do you?
Or recorded.
My
I
phone.
have a prepaid call from Sean
Give me
Phillips,
just a second here.
an inmate in Blackwater River Correctional Facility. Your balance is $72.76. To hear the maximum cost of this call, press 9. If you wish to accept,
He usually doesn't call till 8:30, so
dial
it's
0 now. To refuse this call, hang up. To block inmate calls, dial 7.
all right.
Your call is being connected. Thank you.
All right, my wife's going to do the Sean call. He normally don't call till 8:30, so that kind of caught me off guard. All right, let's continue to read Peter Reilly. You can look at the whole list in this press release from the United States Attorney of the District of New Hampshire. The sentence was 37 years for Ed and 35 years for Elaine. I don't know if that is concurrent or consecutive with the original 5-year sentences. Given their apparent age, I don't think it matters much. Here is the description of the drama leading up to their arrest. On June 7, 2007, marshals were in place to make the arrest when Daniel Reilly, a friend of the Browns, came strolling up the driveway. Reilly was alerted to the marshals hiding in the woods, apparently by the Browns' dog, whom he was walking. Reilly fled despite being ordered to stop. Marshals fired non-lethal ammunition at Reilly, but missed, though he was eventually subdued with a taser. Edward heard the commotion and appeared at the tower on top of his house with a .50 caliber rifle, but he did not fire. After the botched attempt to arrest Edward, the marshals revised their approach. By that time, the Browns case had gained national notoriety, and supporters of the couple were flocking to their home. The Browns themselves were hosting festival-type gatherings at their home, publicizing their resistance. The marshals planned to take advantage of this by posing undercover as supporters and accomplishing the arrest in this capacity. And then there's a little picture here that says, recommended by Forbes, stupid is as stupid does, tax protesters and the cheek defense. This cheek defense is very important to understand if you're going to ever get into tax protesting. Peter goes on to write, in October of 2007, undercover marshals made contact with the Browns through a confidential informant and learned that the couple wanted to retrieve some possessions from Elaine's dental office in Lebanon, New Hampshire. On October the 4th, undercover marshals retrieved the property and brought it to the Browns' Plainfield home. The marshals unloaded the property into the garage as Edward leveled an assault rifle at them, all the while expressing a reticence to trust people he did not know. Edward, however, eventually warmed up to the undercover officers and replaced the assault rifle with a handgun in his waistband and invited them to join him for beers and pizza. Big mistake. Okay, cursed be the man that trusteth in man, Jeremiah 17:5. I am very interested in what they did to get arrested, and you know what they did? They trusted their fellow man. That's absolutely a huge mistake right there. The group hung out on the Browns' front porch, and at some point, Elaine joined them, also carrying a handgun. They chatted about the couple's legal woes, including their thus far successful evasion of arrest. When asked by one of the deputies how they managed this feat. Edward responded that authorities were afraid to arrest him because if they did, people would die, including the marshals, chief of police, and sheriff. The gathering continued in this fashion until one officer was able... Now that's what they report. We don't know if that's true or not. Is it on audio? Do they have it recorded on audio? Because I believe that the police will say anything in order to repaint the narrative in favor of the government. So I would like to know if that's on audio or if they're just making that up. I do plan on printing this article off and mailing it to Ed Brown for comment, by the way. The gathering continued in this fashion until one officer was able to maneuver himself between Edward and Elaine, at which time he gave a predetermined signal and the marshals pounced. Neither Edward nor Elaine went quietly, but eventually both were subdued and cuffed. Following their arrest, agents searched the Brown property and found a vast supply of explosives, firearms, and ammunition, including rifles, armor-piercing bullets, pipe bombs, and bombs nailed to trees. The rest of the First Circuit decision is not of that much interest to me, since it is about criminal trial procedure, such as the evaluation of Ed's competency to stand trial. Edward further made a significant number of comments that reflected his atypical legal beliefs and overall distrust of the legal system. There's nothing wrong with having distrust of the legal system. I think it's absolutely appropriate. All you got to do is read Not Guilty, The Unlawful Prosecution of United States Senator Ted Stevens by Rob Carey, or you can read License to Lie, Exposing Corruption in the Department of Justice by Sidney Powell, or if you want to understand the prison industrial complex, you can read The Kennel by Ken Hovind. Viewed in context, these words and behaviors, though often bizarre, did not evidence confusion on Edward's part about the legal proceedings against him, but rather reflected firmly held idiosyncratic political beliefs punctuated with a suspicion of the judiciary. Moreover, while some of these beliefs reflected a misunderstanding of the law, namely that the district court did not have jurisdiction over him and that it was a commercial court, they do not render Edward incompetent. They do not render Edward incompetent to stand trial. There was also stuff about evidence and jury instructions, but none of it struck me as that exciting. During the 9-month standoff with the marshals, the challenge that the Browns made was summed up in the phrase, "Show me the law." And then there's a YouTube video that he puts in his article, and I'll have to go watch that later. The challenge got me to thinking. I spend most of my time helping people with tax compliance, so I know a good bit about the various sections that go into computing the tax. But I could not, off the top of my head, say what section said you had to file. Talk about existential terror. What would I have said to Ed Brown? It was a great relief when, after about 5 minutes, I found in Title 26 of the United States Code. Oh, I guess we're going to see what Peter Reilly thinks is the law. 6012, persons required to make returns of income. Returns with respect to income taxes under Subtitle A shall be made by the following. Every individual having for the taxable year gross income which equals or exceeds the exemption amount. Something tells me that would not have satisfied him. It seems that it does not satisfy Ron Paul either. In the interview, Ron Paul indicated that the Browns were the ones standing up for the law, not the marshals. So I'm wondering how long it will be after he is sworn in as president that he will be pardoning the Browns. I hope it is early, as that last tax season will be real busy as we prepare refund claims for everybody for all open years. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter Reilly CPA. So I thought this was interesting, mainly because there's two reasons I thought this article was interesting now that I've read it. I was interested in how the Browns were eventually caught, and it was because they let down their guard and they trusted somebody. And that's like a huge thing, right? Don't ever trust anybody. I don't care how good you think you know them, don't trust anybody. And the second thing is Peter Reilly's attempt at identifying the law that requires us all to pay income tax. I'm very curious what Mr. Ed Brown will say to that. As indicated, I do plan on printing off this article and mailing it to Ed Brown. All right, very good. Well, thank you, Peter, for sending me that article. He did send me an email, and I appreciate that. It was an opportunity to learn some more about the Ed Brown case. I'm just now in the process of trying to become familiar with it, and any and all information is appreciated. Thank you very much, and have a good day.